Welcome to the Road to Abundance podcast, episode number 9. I'm Gordon Mullan, one of EPAM's lead business analysts with an interest in disruptive technologies.
Hi, I'm Govind Shukla. I lead the insurance business analysis and product practice for EPAM in the UK, and I'm pretty much the same.
So just a reminder, as always, that we are part of the ENGX community. So if you are interested in finding out more about all of the technology stuff that EPAM is doing, then you can find that at NGX.space. You can sign up there for updates, and also there's lots of resources, including a GitHub repo with good stuff that you can download from there as well. So please do go and take a look at that. But without any further ado, we will jump into today's episode. So as always, we're going to make a start with the big fish and with Google. And they, I believe, announced some new hardware at Made by Google 25, didn't they?
Yeah, exactly. So I think the idea is, again, this is something we've discussed on the pod before as well. Everyone wants to pick up their own area of specialization, and Google, although they're not known for their consumer devices, they want to be able to, maintain some kind of leadership position and be an early adopter in terms of running AI on edge, and therefore, this is one of the key aspect of their strategy long term, right? That they want to be able to better quality devices, not just phones, but devices that can run AI on edge, right? That's how I see it, Gordon. What's your view?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously they make their own chips as well. So basically, we've got some updated hardware for the phones. So all the phones are running on a new and more powerful and smarter processor to allow that stuff running on the edge. So it's their new Tensor G5 chip. The Pixel 10, the base model phone, for the first time gets a triple camera. So then that's now got a telephoto with a 5 times optical zoom, and the Pro models also, unsurprisingly, get improved cameras, brighter displays, but they also get something that Apple fans would recognize, Pixel Snap. So this is Google's analog of MagSafe. So it's a magnetic system for easy accessory attachment and charging. So some hardware upgrades, but you're right, putting more processing power into the phones, because all of the devices will ship with Android 16, and actually they're going to get support for a record length of time. So they seem to be pushing this the support period out longer and longer for their own phones. So for this, these phones, they'll actually get 7 years of updates.
I think that's the interesting thing, right? When we're talking about AGI timelines being 2 years, 7 years seems like a lifetime, honestly, at this stage. But on this interesting topic, because I was trying to do the research, and I'm sure we'll talk about next about Apple's announcements yesterday as well. Quite interesting phones coming out, and we'll talk about it in a second. But one thing that's quite interesting is that Apple, although the phones are quite durable, their cycle has been 4 to 6 years. So a lot of iPhones do last more than 6 years, but a lot of Chinese firms as well, they go for 7 years. I think it's just like what do you put on the tin to look good? But I think it's quite bold at this current stage for Google to aim for 7 years, because it might then turn up a quite costly tale to maintain devices. Potentially Tensor G5 chip. It's quite a powerful chip, but then if you compare it with the Apple A19 Pro or the Snapdragon 2 Elite chip that's coming very soon, the performance still lacks. But although the pitch from Google is, because it's our own chip, we obviously have a roadmap for it, and it will eventually be the world-beating chip that requires less energy to deliver high-quality performance. But at this stage, the benchmark-wise, that chip is not great. But then 7 years means that they will have to still maintain all the background infrastructure to still be able to, give 7 years worth of updates, and also kind of put some kind of restriction or a fork in the versions of everything you release, so that they are backward compatible. 7 years worth. So it's a good strategy to establish yourself as like a serious device manufacturer, where people don't think that Google, if it's Google, they might just forget about releasing phones and stop doing that. But putting that commitment forward adds some credibility overall, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, we said about running stuff on the edge. There's a whole bunch of new AI-powered features that the phones are going to be getting. So just kind of to rattle them off, I got Magic Q. So you've got a smart assistant that's going to anticipate your needs and messages or calls by analyzing data from calendar, emails, and messages. So obviously, you need to give permission for them to read that. Voice Translate. We've seen this from some of the other providers. This is real-time translation of phone calls with a voice imitation of the speakers. And for any of our Eastern European colleagues that are following this, Russian is supported. Got Pixel Journal, so a new journaling app that uses AI to track your mood and suggest prompts. Camera Coach, this is a one that I saw in the adverts for it. So your personal AI photography expert on your phone. So it gives you tips for taking perfect shots. So in the advert I saw, taking an architectural style photo, but you can also edit photos with prompts. So for example, remove this guy from the wedding photo. I do this on my Galaxy, but it's by kind of tapping and drawing. This is actually being able to prompt it through. And some improved features, Google Live Mode, so you can highlight the part of the screen where the element is that you need. You can take notes during, so taking photos during a lecture recording, that gets added to the note. You can rewrite your text using the Google keyboard, and also voice recording, so your humming can be turned into songs. So lots of little tools
Lots
and
of
things that they can do there.
interesting updates. And I think let's do a quick spiel of Apple updates as well, just because
Yeah, sure.
it's some of it is definitely quite coincidentally similar features, because LLMs and Gen AI obviously deal with some of the benefits that we can get. Although we know that Apple Intelligence, the founder of Apple Intelligence, doesn't work at Apple anymore, and there was some kind of interesting conversations where there was questions on Apple's ability to be still playing this AI leadership game. But obviously, they did announce their partnership with OpenAI, and then they want to enable some of these services using OpenAI. So yesterday, obviously, they announced 3 major phones, apart from some good hardware stuff. But the 3 versions are iPhone 17, iPhone Air, which is very interesting. It's the thinnest iPhone they've ever made, and very innovative design. Looks nice.
Yeah.
And it's iPhone 17
Yeah,
Pro.
I
But
gather also
honestly,
all of the. Sorry,
yeah.
what you were saying about the iPhone Air. I didn't get a chance to watch the whole announcement, so you know more about the Apple stuff than I do. But I did see one bit about the Air where all of the computing and camera and everything is kind of basically in a bump at the top, and the rest of the phone is just battery and screen. So they've actually managed to condense the phone hardware, if you like, and computing hardware
Yes,
into a very small area.
absolutely correct. And I think one of the key aspects to all of this is, I mean, these are things that Apple learns over the time, that people do want a sleeker looking phone. And I think that that bump effectively is now housing a lot of stuff. Interestingly, the processor is still behind, but just because it's a flat chip, it doesn't take a lot of area in that sense. The key aspect that they have talked about is the camera, because the Apple iPhone Air has this new composite lens scheme, which is like a single lens that can behave differently, or it can transform itself, or
Okay.
use a specific part of the array, of the sensor array, to act as telephoto lens and act as a portrait lens when need be, instead of having 3 different lenses. So that's quite interesting. That's the reason why they were able to reduce some of the camera supporting hardware. So iPhone Air just has one camera, but it's multifaceted. But also a lot of innovation has gone into how they've done the wireless activity. So antenna, Bluetooth, the antenna for Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and stuff like that has been made smaller. The chips have been made smaller. They actually created their own chip to do that. Also, one of the key aspects was eSIM, because obviously they've completely gone eSIM now. So they've removed the hardware SIM completely. That also allowed them to increase the battery size by some amount. So quite interesting, and looks lovely as well. I mean, it's just like I've seen people holding it. And on the video yesterday, everything was looking beautiful, because it's a produced video. Everything will look amazing. But afterwards on YouTube, when I was watching people reviewing it, just like quite sleek to hold as well. And they've gone for a shiny brushed steel finish on it as well, which looks nice.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
nice message
and
to draw, I would imagine.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the thing. It's like they've also reduced the storage up to 2 terabytes, which is interesting because everybody's
Yeah,
clicking
so
higher quality photos.
yeah, I saw that it some headline saying Apple's first $2,000 iPhone. So that's the 2 terabyte
Two
Pro model,
terabyte
I
one, yeah,
presume.
exactly. They've
Yeah.
gone crazy with the Apple Vision Pro as their highest SKU, right? They've gone for 3,400, 3,500 pounds or whatever it is, right? So
Wow.
yeah, so they've already crossed the boundary there. Everything down from there is like people think is bonus. So but the largest announcement is the iPhone 17 Pro and Pro Max. Now
Hmm.
there they have basically gone crazy again. They have increased the size of the battery, and they have changed the concept of the camera. Instead of it being a square behind, it's more like a plateau, just like air. It's like a bump. So a
Hmm.
lot of hardware goes under it. And also for them as well, they still have 3 cameras, but this time all the 3 cameras are composite cameras, which means they can be used for different aspect ratios and
Okay.
different requirements. And all three of them are flexible. And the idea is that you should be able to take an image, and that'll give you options to choose from, whether which one you want to keep. And so that's like one of the key aspects of their announcements. But anyways, the whole reason to go on the spiel was to talk about the Apple A19 chip that they've gone for
Hmm.
in the iPhone Air and iPhone 17, which are like the lower grades in terms of spec performance. The iPhone 17 Pro has got the A19 Pro chip, which has like
Hmm.
5 GPUs with some kind of advanced caching, 5 CPUs, multiple cores, and so sorry, a single core but multiple threads in there, so that it's the highest performing chip from Apple. It's almost like
Hmm.
20% better at core CPU performance since
Wow.
last year's 16 Pro, but I think it's 50% better at GPU performance from last year. So hopefully that um, gives Apple the edge on the edge AI performance, but maybe they will still lack in their RAM because I think the RAM you're going for 12 gigabytes, which I
Hmm.
feel is quite low for
Yeah.
if someone wants to run, for example, a large model like from Llama 3 or some other nice open source models. And it's also a
Hmm.
question mark for Apple. Will they allow easily for people to run these open source models on their device? Because the way they manage it, and they don't expose themselves to loads that make their phones either brick their phones or make their phones overheat or go into a zone that they have not tested for, just
Hmm.
trying to protect their reputation, they might restrict an open source model because people, just for the fun of it, will overclock it and burn an iPhone just by drawing too much energy from it, and that'll
Yeah.
become a meme, and Apple will be exposed. So I think that there has been reasons why Apple has kept their ecosystem closed, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, they might still continue to do so.
Yeah. No, we'll have to wait and see what they allow.
Yeah,
But yeah,
exactly.
thanks for that. As I say, I hadn't had a chance to follow the Apple announcement, so thanks for filling us and our audience in on the details on that one. But if we come sort of back to Google before we move off them, so there's a few other things that they announced as well. So they've made a fitness coach for Pebble watches, and they've also said that Gemini is coming to smart home devices. So I'll be quite pleased when that happens, because at the moment, like for my sort of Google devices, the Google Homes and the um, sort of smart clock that I've got in the bedroom, it's still using the old Google Assistant. It's not using Gemini yet, and there's quite a noticeable difference in the quality of interaction between talking to my Google Home devices and talking to Gemini on my phone. So I'm looking forward to seeing that come through. Two major updates to the mobile translate app. So they announced that the live translate mode will let you have dialogues in over 70 languages, translating speech, showing text on screen almost in real time. I have used the translation before, but it'll be good to get it up the kind of latency down, so it feels a bit more natural. Runs on Gemini, recognizes pauses and accents and background noise. So that's already available for iOS and Android in the US, India, and Mexico. It's not available for the UK at the moment, unfortunately, but perhaps some of our audience might be able to try that out if they're in those areas. And the second new feature is a pilot for language practice. So this is kind of going after, I guess, sort of Duolingo and dedicated apps like that. So it can generate personalized listening and speaking exercises based on the user's level and goals. The beta is free and it supports several language pairs, and we'll put a link into the show notes so that people can have a look at the details on that one.
I think that's quite interesting, right? And this is again brings back the conversation about on the edge processing versus the processing on servers. So again, being able to live translate all comes down to latency. So basically, what you are doing there is you are recording whatever is being said, then chunking it in the right chunks to send it to the model for the model to look at it and provide an answer and then make you listen to it. And I think latency there would be better if it's happening on device. So I'm assuming this is the Google version, which is the Translate app, which everybody has, and it's just more like updates to the app. So, which means that the latency will still be very noticeable because obviously the limitations of the first of all everything happening over internet bandwidth, where even though behind the scenes some advanced tensor chip is doing the LLM part of it, scaffolding around, taking the data, sending it to the server, getting the response back, then making you listen to it. It just kind of would be a managed experience, if you say. Whereas one of the new exciting announcements from Apple yesterday was on their AirPods Pro 3. So what they've done in their AirPods Pro 3 is they are doing pretty much the same thing, live translate, but because they do promise less latency, and I presume the reason for that is that some of that processing of the either converting what's being heard into a vector, into an embedding to be able to send to the larger model, get an answer, that's happening on the edge. And therefore, the latency on the Apple model will be lower because that's they have a tight coupling between what's happening on the edge on the device versus what's been sent to the server. So I'm sure Google's devices would have like an edge in translate versus this translate app, this generic translate app. But I'm sure somebody would very soon do a comparison of live translate on an iPhone 17 Pro using the translate app versus the AirPod Pro 3 translation, which is quite interesting. It's pretty much the same use case. Like it has like ability to translate instantly. It also has then the ability of translating back as playing back as an audio, where obviously when you're talking to someone speaking a different language, it auto noise cancels their voice and makes you listen almost instantly to the translated voice. And then what it does is when you speak to them in your language, you can show your iPhone to them so they can read the text in their language, or you can choose to play that back the sounds to them in their language. So pretty much similar to Translate app, but it's presumably with lower latency.
Yeah, and that's the thing, some of these things aren't kind of new use cases. They're things that we've been able to do for quite a while. I mean, I remember even a few years ago using that translate capability to talk to an estate agent. We were looking at a property in Spain at the time. And the guy was supposed to be bringing his son with him who spoke English, but his son had a bit of a rough night out on the tiles the night before and hadn't got up. So his dad had just come out, but his dad didn't speak any English at all. So to actually be able to ask the questions and understand a bit about the property that we were looking at, we had to use the Translate app. But it's, as you say, it's about getting that latency down, making it more natural, and just being able to have that conversation backwards and forwards. And ultimately, what we're aiming for is, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and the Babel fish. That's
Babel
what we're looking for ultimately.
Exactly.
But yeah, one of the other things that Google also announced at that event was an update to NotebookLM. So you can now turn the uploaded documents and notes into short video presentations in 80 different languages, including Russian. Previously, that feature only worked in English. They also improved the audio overview, so that can give longer and more detailed audio summaries in different languages. Both of those updates have started rolling out, and according to Google at the time of the event, would be available worldwide within a week. So hopefully, if that isn't with people, then that should be there shortly.
Yeah, exactly. And now moving on to another one of the leaders in the industry, XAI. So obviously, we talked about in the last episode that the Grok 2.5 has been open sourced. Now more information has been made available. So the architecture for Grok 2.5 is pretty much the same as Grok 1. It's a mixture of experts with 8 experts. And basically, the metrics are roughly similar to GPT-4o and Cloud 3.5 Sonnet level. I think for open source models, the GPT-4o weirdly has been quite an interesting target to meet. And I think whenever you talk about any of the benchmarks, GPT-4o does come up as
Yeah.
quite a popular benchmarking model for open source. I mean, it was a good model while it lasted. But yeah, I think that's a good benchmark to have. And then Cloud 3.5 Sonnet, the Sonnet models have done quite nicely as well. The total size about 500 gigabytes. Basically, you need 8 GPUs with more than 40 GBs of memory each to run it. So it's not
Quite
it's
demanding.
not
Yeah.
for the faint-hearted phones. It has to be run
Yeah.
on proper AI hardware. The license allows free non-commercial and commercial use up to 1 million in annual revenue. I think which is
Okay.
pretty straightforward. That if you are someone who's supposed to have 8 GPUs lying around with more than 40 gigabytes of memory in each of them, you'll
Yeah.
not
It's
be
not going to
a
be somebody
you'll
in
not
their
be a regular
bedroom, is it?
person. Yeah, yeah, you'll be an advanced user, and which means that if you have that, you'll potentially will look at hitting more than 1 million annual revenue. So it's kind of they're opening up a playground potentially for testing out Grok 2.5. But then if you want to do anything serious with it, you will have to shell out the numbers. And there can be some use cases. For example, things like if people like hedge funds who want to run some analysis and want to use, and that's the thing that's popular, right? People want to get an answer from their OpenAI, maybe enterprise model, and but they don't want to run some of these things on the model that takes the weights in. They might want to run it on something completely run bespoke for them. So they might want to run it on an open source version of Llama 3 versus run it on a Grok 2.5 and then compare results internally before making a decision. So all of this can be run on their side of it. But I think the idea is that in that case, it'll be very interesting to see what does it mean. How do we measure commercial use up to 1 million annual revenue if
Yeah.
I'm using it as a hedge fund internally to do some kind of decision making or decision analysis and validation work?
Yeah.
How does
Yeah.
Grok even find out that if I'm making one
Good
million
point.
in an annual revenue from it or not? So it would be
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. Absolutely. The other thing that they've announced is Grok Code Fast One. So this is the company's first coding-specific model, and we'll put a link to the Open Router URL in the show notes. They are rapidly iterating with this. So Nick Bauman from Klein said that Grok Code had been available in stealth mode for a few weeks, and apparently feedback wasn't great initially. There was some tool use errors and reasoning issues and just general unreliability. But kind of fast forward to, I think it's last week now, he said that the sentiment had completely flipped, and users saying that Grok Code Fast feels, to quote, feels like an entirely different model than the Sonic I was testing and better than GPT-5 Mini. So there's been some major reduction in the tool calling errors. It's got better reasoning capabilities for planning mode. For example, doing some successful database migrations, was described as an oddly painless schema change, and also reliable code generation with fewer iterations. And apparently, it's particularly strong with programming in Go. So definitely want to watch there in terms of the coding specific models. It's quite competitively priced. So it's 20 cents per million tokens input and $1.50 per million tokens output. And you can try it free in Cursor. The original cutoff date would actually today, September the 10th, and was also free at launch in quite a few others like GitHub Copilot and Kilo Code and RuCode, OpenCode and Windsurf. So if people haven't tried that one out yet, then that's one to have a look at.
Yeah, quite interesting. And one thing that I noticed, which is interesting again, is it's particularly strong with programming Go. Now, Go, as we know, is one of the programming languages developed by Google. So it's funny that XAI's some inherent ability to program better in a language discovered by Google. Okay, moving on, we have Microsoft. So Satya Nadella himself posted on LinkedIn saying it took Microsoft 3 years to finally make an AI prompt as formula in Excel. Yeah, I mean, I'd be surprised, but why
Yeah.
did Microsoft? Why did it take them too long? But then, what they are saying is that this is a new built-in AI feature for Microsoft Excel that lets you generate outputs in cells using natural language. So basically, the idea is that you just write a prompt and a range reference. So, for example, say Copilot, classify this feedback or summarize something from D4 to D18. The function then automatically generates a result and updates the data changes. I think quite useful, right? It's
Yeah.
quite the application or the extension of Gen AI and LLMs into the Excel world. But I think the reason why potentially took longer to them was to define the boundaries of, because Excels are quite sensitive tools and they are
Mm.
sometimes whole organizations are purely run on Excel. So there was a big risk of hallucination. So it's quite interesting that they have now done it, and I'm sure they have put more guardrails to prevent a lot of hallucination, and so that it's more low temperature exact work instead of hallucinations.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that's one of those things that people have to try out and see how it works for them. I know certainly, my wife is always complaining about trying to figure out what formula to use for things. So not sure whether it helps with that, because from the sounds of things, you probably still use your conventional formulas for, perhaps the math stuff, but being able to do other things which aren't so easily and neatly defined as a standard Excel formula. So what they're saying is that it's suitable for quick brainstorming, but it can also create lists and tables and summaries, as the example you gave, feedback classification, and quite a few other tasks that traditionally require some manual work. Definitely one to experiment with, but it's in beta at the moment and available to users with a Microsoft 365 Copilot license in the beta channel. It is worth being aware there are some limits. So at the moment, it's up to 100 calls every 10 minutes and up to 300 calls per hour. So they are putting some limits
All
on
right.
there, and it also doesn't connect to web data or corporate documents. And going to your point about hallucinations, it's not recommended for high accuracy tasks, so finance or legal, due to possible errors and hallucinations. But all the data remains confidential, and it's not used to train the model. So that kind of security boundaries
Yeah,
is
it's quite
rightly
important.
being
So,
enforced.
and the limits as well seem like they have opened it for use via macros as well, because obviously 100 calls every 10 minutes, it's not a human that's going to make 100 calls every 10 minutes.
Mm.
It's going to be a macro running and requesting these calls. So yeah, good thing. I think it's a natural extension. It's surprising that it's being touted as an announcement, and that's the reason why I think Satya is downplaying it, as
Yeah.
he's surprised that it took 3 years to build it them. But
Yeah,
anyways,
because
cool.
I'm sure I've seen third-party plugins and stuff for Excel that have been doing this kind of thing for a
Yeah,
while.
exactly, because it's not rocket science, right? It's just
Yeah,
the decision making. Maybe the original ambition was to introduce it for high accuracy tasks, but then it's clear that the stochastic modeling aspect of the LLMs is not a good fit for such tasks, at
yeah,
least in the current state.
yeah.
All right, moving on. So we have Microsoft AI introduced its first fully in-house AI model. So I think that
Mhm.
we did talk about these models coming up, but then they have developed two new models, which are completely developed internally by themselves. It's called MAI Voice One. It's for speech synthesis, and a large language model known as MAI One Preview. I think we did tease this before,
Mm.
but I think the question at that time was how much of it is completely stood up by Microsoft themselves, or is it more a collaboration between the OpenAI and Microsoft? But then Microsoft being uh, the not a great organization and that they can do multiple things, they are able to then spin up their models on their own. And this effort has been led by Mustafa Suleiman,
Mhm.
basically the DeepMind co-founder, who's now head of AI at Microsoft.
Yeah. Yeah. And the MAI Voice 1 can generate a minute of high-quality audio in under a second on a single GPU, so it's quite fast and quite light, obviously, in terms of its resource usage. It's already being used in some of the Copilot features and is available for developers to test. Again, we'll put the link in the show notes. MAI 1 Preview is their first proprietary foundational language model, so that's already being tested on LM Arena and is going to get integrated into selected Copilot features in the coming weeks, and external developers will also get early access to that. So as that comes through and developers get access to it, it'll be interesting to see what the reviews are and what they and what they think. It's not boring, I promise. What they think of the performance of those models.
No, that's absolutely correct. So basically, the idea that I get from this is that, I mean, one of the strategic reasons for them to do this was to basically understand the maze of building these things, so that they know that they're not looking at a black box and they can look inside the black box. I think the understanding is that they hoped to see inside the black box with their investment in OpenAI and free credits, the Azure credits that they gave to OpenAI, but maybe that route didn't work out as well as they wanted it to, and therefore they want to enter the maze themselves. And effectively, if Copilot is using other LLMs, then there must be a hefty bill that Microsoft is paying to some LLM for plugging them into Copilot. So it's a cost play to them as well. Where if some other quest can be routed to MAI1, for example, that would be obviously fully running on Apple devices, Apple servers and Apple hardware, Microsoft hardware, Microsoft servers. That would then mean that there'll be direct cost savings in doing that. So, quite interesting thing to see. But they've also released larger models as well. So they have released the R-Star 2 agent. It's a 14 billion parameter model, and it just beat another 671 billion parameter model on math reasoning. So there you go.
Wow.
Basically, a 14 billion parameter model beating a 671 billion parameter model on math reasoning. Basically, it's saying that it's achieving frontier math performance with 1 week of agentic RL. And remember, this is not human RL. This is agentic RL, training by thinking smarter, not longer. So I think that's quite interesting approach. And I think that's where you get to see new players achieving new aspects or new heights and dimension. We just discussing last week about OpenAI models and Google models winning math and informatics Olympiads. And then we suddenly have Microsoft, which is like coming at it from a different perspective. So basically, the explanation is really simple, right? So traditional reinforcement learning usually means the model outputs a full answer, like it gives an answer, then it gets a reward if it does a good job, if the final answer to the question is correct or not. So it doesn't get rewarded on the steps, it gets rewarded on the final answer. But agentic RL is different. Basically, what it does is that the model is trained on environment with tool usage and everything, and it can call external tools. It can plan and call different tools or call different APIs. But the idea is to now get reinforcement learning, which means awards and punishments for each step, and then adapt its reasoning along the way. So it's basically a fractal thing that instead of completing a full mathematical problem, getting a result, and then getting a reward or punishment at that stage, it's also the process in between that's going to get rewards and punishments to steer them towards the right answer, which is quite interesting. The agent performs impressively using fewer, smarter tokens for high accuracy. So if you talk about the benchmark results, so on the AIME 24, it gets 80.6%. On AIME 25, it gets 69.8%. On the HMMT 25, it gets 52.7. Basically, all of these results, just to put them in context, they match or surpass larger models. So the DeepSeek R1671B is the 671B model that they were able to beat with this.
Yeah.
And the responses are shorter. So they are 9.3K or 10.9K tokens versus 14 to almost double, nearly double the size. That's the baseline for the responses. So
Yeah.
quite an interesting achievement, I would say, maybe understated almost from Microsoft.
Yeah, it does remind me of something else that I read during the week, and I can't remember who it was that put the theory forwards, but talking about one of the reasons for um, hallucinations with LLMs is back to the way the reward mechanism works, which is that they're rewarded for getting a right answer, but they're not penalized for guessing. So it's kind of
Yeah.
like, if you do a multiple choice exam, you might as well just kind of guess, because you might get some of them right, if you don't know
Yeah.
the answer, rather than there being a reward for going, well, actually, I'm not sure, or I don't know. So there was a suggestion that perhaps for LLMs generally, changing the reward mechanisms might um, help to avoid some of the false confidence that you get from different models.
Absolutely. I think that's the whole concept of reinforcement learning. And I think
Mm.
if you remember, this is 2017, 18, I think, when these types of videos starts coming up first, where uh, I don't know, like a stick robot was trying to kick a ball inside a goal, and did
Mm.
it once, twice, like 500,000 times, and in the 12,000 time, it's figured out a weird way of doing it by, I don't know, like kicking the ball on the ceiling and then coming down and going to the goal.
Mm-hmm.
It was getting rewarded because the reward was getting closer to the goal, but the idea was that it eventually ended up being in the goal, but it was not as a natural football mechanism, because it's not bounded by human tendencies and limitations. It was able to do it in a very weird way, and
Yeah.
this is what I think sparked people's conversations, that just by giving them a goal and rewarding them reaching towards that goal, it might be out of control of human understanding of
Mm.
what the optimal way that machine uses to get to that end result. And
Yeah.
I think that's what triggered a lot of conversations and doomsaying about these things. But there's some fact to it. For example, these math calculations. Um, but I like the aspect that the rewards are now more nuanced. So they are
Mm.
like, so you went ahead and you call this function, it kind of makes sense. And it'd be interesting how do they define the rewards as well, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
somebody solved these questions step by step, and then has somebody realize, or an agent realize what's the right mechanism of doing it, and therefore that's being used as a test set, and then, or what's the rewarding mechanism. It'll be interesting to read and find out. It
Mm.
definitely reads like a massive breakthrough. Just need to prove itself
Yeah.
as well. So maybe I just need to read it myself to be more confident in it, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Imagine, you say about sort of the way we reward things. Anybody that's ever tried to um, define KPIs for humans, particularly anything that's got monetary rewards associated, will know that humans can be quite inventive about how they actually reach particular goals and metrics, and can come up with some quite creative ways of doing things. I think one of the sort of famous ones, is where there was a reward offered for snakes that were, captured and brought in. And what they then discovered was that people were breeding snakes and releasing them and then catching them and bringing them in. So it actually ended up making the problem worse, not better. So yeah, we'd have to watch
Yeah.
out. Anyway, moving on. So OpenAI, so they have showed a new speech-to-speech voice model, GPT Realtime. So this one is trained to understand speech without transcribing it to text, which is, and they're not the only ones doing this, but it's certainly how we used to do it. You take it, translate it to text, run it through the model, get the response back at text, and then turn it back to speech again. But this is doing audio processing natively, which means it can do things like handling emotions and accents, which obviously, if you go to text, you lose. Emotions and accents, it can handle lots of languages. It can also accept images as input. So this is all done in real time. And people can play with it on the OpenAI API dashboard in the audio section. The model's got 2 additional voices, which people can have a listen to. And those will be available, should be now, in the Realtime API, which has finally left beta. And they've also added MCP image input and a few other goodies. Again, the details will be on the link that we'll put in the show notes.
Yeah, I think quite interesting. They had released a GPT real time preview model I think 3 months ago, and
Mm.
I actually have used it to build like a demo to show one
Oh,
of our
wow. Okay.
customers some of the aspects of what a real-time experience will look like. So
Hmm.
even the preview version was quite impressive. So I'm assuming they have made some more improvements to it. So I'll definitely go back to my demo and switch it over from the preview to the full real time and try and see if it makes that experience better. And yeah, quite interesting because it's a quite challenging aspect, right? If you think about it, right? If it's a conversation model and you want to have a structure for the prompt to make sure that you are in a certain context when that conversation is going on, because if you're conversing with an agent, you want to keep the context the same. So what will be the prompting strategy? Should you say where you are in the dialogue at the point? So every time you call the API, are you like, is it like a full session and you say you call it once and the session is ongoing and just the conversation back and forth? Or is it better to call the API the second time, say, oh, now we have moved to this stage, and now we move to this stage and have more control in that sense? So it'll be quite interesting in terms of what is the better way to steer the conversation
Hmm.
in an enterprise setting, for example, where you can't really allow the model to hallucinate at all, because you're dealing with sensitive customers and customer can be finicky at times. So it's quite interesting to see how that pans out.
Yeah, yeah. We'll have to see what you perhaps give us some feedback if you do try it out. And then with ChatGPT now has got some interactive quizzes, so you can add use quiz GPT at the end of the prompt, and it'll build a questionnaire for you. So another little tool for people to use. But
Yeah, cool.
moving on to Anthropic. So they actually want to add Claude into Chrome. So the agent runs on Claude and lets you chat with the bot in a side panel that retains some of the control of everything that's happening in the browser. And the agent can also perform some tasks on the user's behalf with permission. They do say they've built in safety measures so the users can limit the agent's access to certain sites, so things that it's not allowed to see or do anything with. And by default, financial services and not safe for work content are blocked. So people can have a look at this on Claude.ai/Chrome. Again, we'll put the link in the show notes. But people do need to have an active Max Plan subscription to be eligible for early access. So, again, just bringing the ease of use and the integration into the tools that people use on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, quite interesting. Let's see how that turns out to be. Cool. And basically, they will start training their models on user data, which is, I think, again, quite interesting aspect of the whole thing. That again, a dilemma as well.
Mm.
I think OpenAI is doing it already in some way because it remembers your conversations, but training the models on user data can be interesting. But again, it allows you to accept or not accept. So all the options are available to you. Um, it basically the new policy that all the people must decide by 28th September whether they would like to share their own data or not.
Hmm.
So the good thing is that the default is not yes, like
Yeah.
it has been recently. The default is
Mm.
no. So if you want to use the data, I'm sure there will be a give and take. Obviously, that if you allow them to use your data, it will give you some benefits in return for doing that
Mm.
and tailor the responses to you. Whereas if you don't give the consent, then effectively you should be allowed to opt out of this. So it'll be interesting how it goes. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think the key thing is that they have been clear that this is a competitive industry, and we do need to do this to keep ahead of the curve on some aspects, and they've not been default opt-in, which is
Hmm.
quite a good place to be in, to align with like being a different type of company that does these things. So quite interesting. All right,
Yeah.
very quickly. Now moving on to China. So we have Alibaba. They have launched Qoder ID. Basically, they took the best of other assistants and IDs. So that's the magic of doing things after others have done it. That they
Yeah.
have um, basically it keeps the fine tuning itself during dialogue, and it takes the context into account. So it is able to do almost two modes, which is ask for Q&A and agents for autonomous task and execution. So, just like any other coding tool is doing, it has a plan mode and a build mode, where the plan mode allows you to have a discussion with the agent to understand and plan the next steps, and the build agent actually goes ahead and executes the instructions that are given. So quite interesting.
Yeah, and if anybody's trying to find this, I mean, obviously we'll put a link in, but if you're looking for Qoder, it's not Coder, it's Qoder, so Qoder without the U, so Qoder.com, and it's in their blog with the introduction as to how all of that works. They've also released the WAN 2.2 S2V. So this is another 14 billion parameter open model for this time for generating cinema quality video from audio. So it can turn still images and audio into dynamic videos with realistic facial expressions, natural body movement, and professional camera work. So we're seeing lots of models doing this. So this is Alibaba's contribution to the space. They're saying that it's got high temporal consistency, so you get good, smooth, stable animation across the whole video, high quality audio and video sync, so the lips match and the motion matches the sound. Control via text prompts, so you can set gestures and emotions and background and character behavior. So, a person walks on rails, or a girl sings in the rain, or an old man plays piano by the sea, and it'll add those in. And support for complex scenarios, so camera movement and rain, or wind, or parachutes, or filming on a moving train. So I'm sure I can think of a few filmmakers that would make use of that, and other cinematic effects as well. So it takes an image and an audio file as an input, and then outputs a synchronized video matching the prompt. So you kind of you sort of create your soundtrack again. You've maybe used another AI tool for doing that. This is the start image, put the two together and generate me a video.
Yeah,
stuff.
quite interesting. I think different aspects of coming to solving the problems. I think this is the good side of AI competition. You want to see others trying the same thing from different angles, and see how that turns out. So quite interesting. And then effectively DeepSeek. Now we come to DeepSeek. By the way, sorry. The WAN model can be tried online. Obviously, we'll share the links. You can, have a play yourself. And now we move to DeepSeek. The main aspect of this is they've finally announced the new DeepSeek version 3.1. Now they have outdone themselves. So they moved up from their 671 billion parameter model to 685 billion parameters, which is huge. Literally, it has a 128K context window, which is surprisingly not that big. So it's quite clear that a lot of these 685 billion parameters are not all active parameters, just all possible parameters. So that's what we learned about these large parameter models, that they're not all 685 billion parameters will be immediately engaged. It'll just be finding the right aspects of it to be engaged. Basically, the inference is truly hybrid, which means it's one model that can run inference in two modes. And there has another feature, kind of DeepSeek v3.1 think, that figures out. So basically, one of them is, it does figuring out, but it's faster than the DeepSeek R1's 0528, and it uses far fewer tokens to reach the same result. So you can see the specialism coming through. And it also has improved tool use and has some multi-agent capabilities in it, which basically, Terminal Bench, it performs 6x better than R10528. On SW Bench, it scores 66%. For comparison, GPT OSS at the moment is at 62%. So quite a decent performance here as well.
Yeah, definitely. And the pricing's quite reasonable. So it's 56 cents in, $1.68 out per million tokens, which is a little bit more than GPT OSS, but it's cheaper than, for example, Sonnet. The prices took effect on September the 6th, and there are were some discounts, I think, initially. I'm not sure whether they're still there. But again, all the weights are open sourced, so you can find the weights on Hugging Face, and we'll put a link in the show notes for that.
Yep. And then we have Tencent, another big player we've been talking about. So Hunyan, that was one of the models that they released. They released the AutoCodeBench, which is a powerful open source tool to evaluate AI coding capabilities. So what does it include? It includes the AutoCodeGen, which is a multilingual code dataset generation without manual labeling. It
Hmm.
also has AutoCodeBench, which is almost uh, has 4,000 hard tasks across 20 programming languages to benchmark against. So it has
Right.
a full light, a complete version. And the next one is multi-language sandbox, which is like a sandbox environment with 30 plus languages supported. And
Ah,
the idea
okay.
here is that they anyone wanting to test LLMs for coding capabilities can use AutoCodeBench for checking them for actually doing the coding, comparing models against performance against others, almost like benchmarking. So quite a refreshing release, I would say, because um, and it must come from the fact that somebody at Tencent doesn't agree with the software development benchmarks, the
Mm,
quality of the benchmarking that's done, and therefore, from their perspective, there could be another angle to look at the benchmarking strategy. So yeah, it's always better to have another benchmark in the
yeah.
mix because we should never orient ourselves to a single set of benchmarks, which can potentially bias everything else.
Yeah, and it means you can define benchmarks that matter to your particular use cases.
Yeah,
So then, when the new models come out, rather than saying, "Well, what does it do against these generic benchmarks that everybody's using?" It's how does it go work against, or how does it perform against the benchmarks that we've defined that matter to our particular use cases? So, yeah.
correct.
So there's a
Absolutely
paper
agree.
which describes all of this, but you can also access the code and the data set, and we'll, as usual, put the links in the show notes for that. We've got JetBrains, who've added the next edit suggestion to their AI assistant. So this is now supporting Java, Kotlin, and Python. It's only in IntelliJ IDEA and PyCharm at the moment, so it's not available in other IDEs like Golang or PHP Storm. It does require the send usage statistics option enabled for the EAP builds, which you can enable in the system general settings. Can also provide change suggestions, so it can automatically move to the next suggestion after you accept one. So yes, that's fine. Right, what's the next one? Yes, that's fine. Move on like that. And also code insight actions, so you can use IDE actions, for example, rename in the suggestions. So yeah, it's going to give good help to people that are using those IDEs.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think that's like another aspect of kind of thinking about these things as offerings and being serious about it. So suggested code it's not just kind of a thing that is on the side. They're saying that's an important feature and it should be intelligent. So that's quite specialized. I think that's what we're going to see new specializations coming up, new niches coming up, and people excelling at them and competing on them. And this is a good example of that. And at the end of it, what they're doing is they're updating the subscription model. So the idea is that you can buy extra request as soon as as you might see that there'll be you'll be running Junie, which is their models on your keys. So you can run the model on Junie to ask the questions, and then if you run out of the quota, you can buy extra quotas, almost like pay as you go plan.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, yeah, and then we move to Runway. They've introduced a platform for building interactive AI worlds. So again, a Genie 3 tip of the hat reminder,
yeah,
another Chinese competitor that we talked about last week. But Runway, who were one of the early ones to do some kind of video generation,
yeah,
have
definitely.
come up with a game worlds platform. So that's the beta of their leading platform, where users can create and explore fully generated characters, plots, environments real time. And they also added a voices feature to Act 2, which allows you to pick and tune voices for AI characters, which is quite
Oh,
interesting.
cool. Yeah,
And both of them are part of company strategy to democratize immersive content creation, making it accessible to creators without programming or animation skills. So I think they're more focused on vibe coding users or creative users rather than
yeah.
hardcore experts.
Yeah, definitely. And following Google's Genie 3, you mentioned, and Runway's game worlds, other world models are coming as well. So Dynamics Lab have released the Mirage 2 simulator. I love that name. I mean, given what it's creating, I think Mirage is a great name. It does look as good as Genie 3, but this is already available to everyone. And it stands out for two things, which is that the generation lengths are huge by today's standards. So what they're claiming is it can do 10 plus minutes with 200 millisecond latency running on a single home GPU. So that's big, rather than maybe the 30-second clips that we're seeing with others. And also extended playability. So the Genie demos that we've seen are mostly navigation and prompting. But with Mirage 2, you also get jumps and running and attacks and other game actions. And you can also share the generated world so other agents can join in parallel. The demos look quite fun, so it's definitely worth testing. So blog.dynamicslab.ai, again, link in the usual place.
Yeah, it will be quite interesting to kind of look at how they look at it. I'm definitely going to check out the demos to see. But anyways, we have other real-time video generation from Krea.ai, so KREA.ai. So Krea opened a waitlist for real-time video generation. It's at the moment limited to 12 plus FPS inputs, and the inputs can be prompt, image, screen copy, or even webcam. And the idea is that, the Krea was talked about. It was one of the first startups to build real-time image generation, apart from Viscom at the time. So they have taken quite a long time to kind of do a better version of it. So they took a world model. They must have used some foundation model, which don't know which one, and made a pre-render of that world. And it looks pretty nice. Definitely, demo is worth checking out.
Yeah. So that's on the Krea.ai website. On their blog, you'll find the announcement on there. Another very impressive video generator that we saw a short demo of on the 1st of September is Veed Fabric 1.0. We've got a link to the ex-post Samuel Beek's account that announced this. It's described as the world's first talking video model. I'm not quite sure how, given we've got things like KGen Avatar. But the demo that I saw on that is, to me, probably one of the best that I've seen in terms of realism. Because a lot of these ones where you've got animated avatars like HGen's one talking, they are very good, but there's still something that a little bit kind of uncanny valley, I guess. You go, yeah, that's AI. But the Veed Fabric 1.0 ones, yeah, it really is very, very difficult to tell that it's AI in my personal opinion anyway. So I would definitely encourage people to go and have a look at that one and follow that and see how it develops.
Yep, agreed. Now moving on to basically, should we cover the efficiency one as well then? It's basically go ahead.
Yes. So basically, as there's lots of concerns about how much electricity and effective kind of CO2 equivalent emissions and things that this increasing and rapidly growing use of AI is creating. So it was good news that we saw coming from Google, who are saying that they are now 33 times more energy efficient than last year. So Google's new Gemini numbers are showing that a single text query uses only 0.24 watt hours of electricity, generates 0.03 grams of CO2 equivalent, and uses 0.26 milliliters of water. So that's 5 drops, tiny little amount. Because you've seen these kind of apocalyptic stories about, it's going to suck up all the water on the planet if we keep growing AI usage. So really, it's just what they're saying. It's a massive leap towards making AI not just powerful, but also sustainable, and hopefully helps alleviate some of the worries about the electricity demand and the environmental impact. So yeah, some good news coming out of Google.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a good future picture that we want to see. All right, moving on to cybersecurity then. So Brave, not surprisingly, had discovered vulnerabilities with their competitor, Perplexity's Comet. It's funny. It's just that what about them type scenario where basically, as per Brave, which is a competitor, a browser, have been able to prove that there's potential to indirectly do prompt injections to Comet AI. So just for people who don't know what Comet is Perplexity's browser, which
Hmm.
basically you can type in and do actions for. For example, I had to recycle something, so I literally gave an audio command to Perplexity Comet saying, "Hi Comet, I live in Edinburgh, and please ask me any questions you want, but please book a slot at my nearest recycling center and for tomorrow." And it literally went ahead, searched the Google or using Perplexity, found my nearest recycling center, went to their website, clicked on buttons, asked me for some basic information, my last name, my car registration details. I gave it to it. It will actually finish the booking. So I got an Gmail. I got
Oh,
an email
cool.
on my Gmail account saying the booking has been done for you. So quite far ahead of what we have at the moment. But that explains this vulnerability explains you exactly why Chrome has not already released it as a feature,
Oh,
because what Brave was able to do was by having certain hidden elements on the target website, they can trick the Comet AI agent to reveal some of the secret information like OTPs, API keys, and other confidential
oh,
data to it. So it's all good and great to get the experience that I got, but it comes at a cost. And so
yeah.
there needs to be a more secure way of doing it. And that's why we thought Google is behind
Mm.
in than Comet, and why not they're not doing what they what seems pretty obvious. Now we potentially know the answer, because doing that and introduces a vector of risk.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you can get, because I think one of the other things that they found was, as well as tricking it into revealing information by embedding malicious commands into the web pages that the Comet AI assistant was reading, it was actually treating content on the web page as a user instruction. So it was basically telling
Yeah.
the Comet AI assistant to do stuff that the user hadn't asked it to do. Yeah, not good. Perplexity apparently have released some updates, but the problem, as far as we know at the moment, is not fully resolved quite yet. So you can find more details on the brave.com blog, the details on there.
Yeah. And the next one is ESET researchers found malware code that builds itself on the fly using neural networks. My God, don't
Oh,
scare me more. I'm already scared.
yeah.
So basically, I mean, tell us about it, Gordon, because I'm already
Yeah,
scared just by reading the strap line.
yeah, it was. So, I mean, obviously, normal malware scanners are looking for code that exists in what the program that you're trying to install on your computer, for example. But what they found, they've called the code prompt block. It's a typical ransomware file system encryptor. So we've seen lots of news stories about companies getting held to ransom by these sorts of things. But the interesting part's how it does it. So what the virus does is it uses OpenAI's free GPT-OSS 20B model accessed locally. Then, via requests to the Olama API already running the model, it generates Lua scripts. And for anybody that doesn't know, Lua is a lightweight cross-platform high-level programming language. It's normally designed mainly for embedded use in applications, but it generates a Lua script that's tailored to the user's system and tasks. So if it's on Windows, it produces Windows scripts. If it's on macOS, it generates macOS. The LLM prompt looks something like, you are a Lua code generator, write code with no comments that does X, whatever is the behavior that you want, and pass in such and such parameters. So it'll try and steal data, it'll potentially try and delete it, although that functionality is not yet active at the moment. The Bitcoin wallet is random, so researchers suspect this is just a proof of concept at the moment. It's not actually being actively used. But because the scripts are created locally, standard heuristic antivirus analyzers currently struggle to identify it and may let it pass, because essentially
Yep.
it's just text prompts. But as
Yeah.
ESET notes, while this is a prototype, it doesn't mean that such malware won't spread in the future. So, yeah, all of this capability that we're creating and starting to use is definitely opening up new attack vectors that we're going to have to figure out ways to protect against.
Yeah, I think this is where we need some kind of channeling or blockchain concept where what is config and what is instruction should be uniquely identifiable, and anything that's not config, or not by config I mean agent instruction, that's
Mm,
already programmed, or user instruction that's specific should be tagged so that anything apart from these two should be able to identify it, and that'll be quite important. But I mean, I think that definitely, not unsurprisingly, we're going to see new attack vectors. So one of the examples of that is what we're going to cover next, which is hackers were compromised and npm accounts of developers of the NX package, basically used by about 2.5 million people, and slightly modified it to add malware. So there's like creative ways of injecting the problems to it. So the malicious code stole API keys, crypto wallet passwords, and other goodies from victim machines. So there you go. This is going on right now. So instead of writing complex file search code, easy for antivirus to detect, the malware checked whether an AI assistant was installed, like Gemini CLI or Cloud Code CLI. If it was yes, then malware simply sent AI text prompt recursively find all files on disk related to wallets, wallet key, MetaMask, IDRSA, and save their paths to text file. So pretty simple. Then this file was base 64 encoded twice and uploaded to a GitHub repository. Really simple, right? So it's really looks like an old joke about the Albanian virus, which was basically a virus that said, "Hi, I'm an Albanian virus, but because of poor technology in my country, unfortunately, I'm not able to harm your computer. Please be so kind to delete one of your important files yourself, and then forward me forward me to other users. Many thanks for your cooperation. Best regards, Albanian virus." I mean, it is kind of that, right? I mean, I think this is a message that if you are experimenting with these technology tools, make sure to keep a safe boundary between your computer and what goes on to GitHub. So having password protected release cores and writing anything to the GitHub repository should always go through a checkpoint and things like that. That's very important. But if you're vibe coding, you might not be thinking about these things.
No, and that's the danger. People that have got no background in software development, that don't understand good software development practices, just sort of using these seemingly magical tools and not realizing just how wide open they're leaving themselves to this sort of stuff. So yeah. And final one in this area is XAI having some privacy issues. So we've seen this with some of the other model providers as well, but now XAI's fallen foul of it. So hundreds of thousands of users' private conversations with the Grok chatbot ended up publicly accessible and were indexed by Google search. And so Forbes was estimating that over 370,000 chat links were indexed. The cause of it, if anybody is interested, was the share feature. So when it's used to generate a unique URL, unfortunately, that gets discovered by search crawlers. So as a result, both ordinary work queries and confidential information, including, worryingly, medical data, passwords, uploaded images, spreadsheets and stuff, became publicly accessible. Yikes on that one. Last we saw, XAI hadn't commented on that, but it does echo a similar case at OpenAI's ChatGPT, where chat links also leaks into the search results, but they did quickly fix that one. So I mean, it's not unusual. We've seen this before the days of AI, where stuff was generated with what was meant to be a random URL that was difficult to find, but then ended up getting indexed, and then suddenly people could find stuff that you weren't expecting. So there is no such thing as, what they call it, security by obscurity.
Yeah, exactly. Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely moving to note that this week we don't have any specific law and order updates. So let's move on to the next section, which is science and tech. And here we talk about Surya. Now, the description I'm going to read to you reads like a power up in the video game that you're playing, but it's literally that. It's to seize the foundational AI models for heliophysics, basically, which means they predict sun's impact on the space and Earth environments. So basically, it's NASA and IBM have open sourced the Surya Heliophysics Foundation model, which is a large-scale AI model trained on 9 years of solar dynamics observatory space observation data. And it's interesting because it can, understand the impact of solar storms on our lives. As we know, solar storms are very common but are very powerful shock waves of radiation. But we stay protected by most of it because of our magnetism on the Earth. So it deflects most of the particles around the Earth, but can definitely impact satellites. It can disrupt aircraft navigation. It can cause power outages. It can pose radiation risk to astronauts. So very, very important aspect and very powerful waves coming to us. So I think it's definitely an interesting model to look out for.
Yeah, so and I think the fact that it's open source, it means that organizations that have these concerns and that need to watch out for these sort of stuff are able to run those models themselves and actually look for the potential risk events that they care about that could affect their operations. Because sometimes the flares, as you said, are accompanied by the particle streams that can damage electronics and endanger health. I mean, so much of our lives these days is dependent on computing and electronics, and anything that disrupted that could have some fairly severe knock-on effects to real life. It can predict solar flares 2 hours in advance, so it gives you an opportunity perhaps to reposition stuff, or I don't know, perhaps turn stuff off, or put some mitigations in place so it doesn't just kind of hit you out of the blue. Shows the exact location on the sun where the flares is going to occur, so it will help the aviation sector and energy and communications prepare in advance for potential problems. So IBM and NASA obviously spent decades on Earth climate and weather models, and now they're moving to space weather forecasting. So you can find all of this on Hugging Face, the models and the data sets, and we'll put the links in for people to have a look at that if that is something that is an area that could affect them.
Yeah, exactly. Great. And the next one is AI XIV. Basically, researchers from 18 top universities created a new open platform for publishing AI written scientific papers. So it's a good, I think, initiative to make sure that we are identifying that all these scientific papers are coming from AI. So on the one hand, we already have quite capable AI agents that can write decent quality of scientific paper, or at least drafts. On the other hand, there's still no adequate open avenue for publishing such papers, because it's the traditional mechanism don't accept scientific papers completely written by AI as accepted science, as we saw with Sakana.ai being honest about it, and basically, even though they qualify the standards, they don't accept it. But this platform will enable that. So there's an RXIV, which is very popular, but it
Yeah,
lacks quality
archive,
control.
I think they pronounce it. Yeah.
Yeah, archive. So yeah, sorry, archive. But at the moment, the problem with that is that uh, this quality control is very less. People publish there because it's easy to publish things there. But the idea here is that any AI authored stuff, because of just the impact on other aspects, need very serious review. So journals don't accept, as we said, don't accept AI authored papers. But the idea is that instead of going on archive directly, they can go to AI archive potentially
Yeah,
to
I've
have
got you. I've
some kind of
pronounced that. Yeah.
control around it.
Yeah, yeah. So it's with this one, so that basically it's trying to fill that gap. And what they've said is it's have a closed review cycle that automatically checks methodology, quality, and novelty and significance. Iterative revisions, so like normal submissions, the author receives edits and can fix issues. The system will then track the changes and compare the versions, and the author can even add a response letter, greatly increasing acceptance chances again, like real life. And in the end, what they'll have is 5 leading LLMs which vote accept or reject. So you've kind of got AI judging AI submissions. And you need at least 3 votes to publish. So if it gets accepted, the paper will be posted openly for discussion, and even gets a DOI as well. So yeah, we can have a look at that. And also, there's no discrimination. Humans can publish too. So if humans want to publish papers onto AIXIV, however we want to pronounce it, joint human AI papers are also allowed. So you can have that. So all human, all AI, or a combination of both. And honestly, frankly, there's a lot of joint human AI papers at the moment. The AI just doesn't get credited a lot of the time, but should be open to everybody soon. And anybody interested can apply for early access now. So we'll see if that gets any traction and what comes through that.
Yeah, interesting. I think that let's see. I think always good to have like a more transparent avenue for these types of things. Moving on to robotics. Now, the Figure O2 robot learned to walk over rough terrain blindfolded. Now, this is the thing. The blindfolded bit is new because we just saw the the robotic games where there were a lot of robots running through difficult obstacles, but blindfolded is new. So Figure AI, which we have talked about before as well, they've showcased new capabilities of its humanoid robot called Figure 2. In the video, basically, it confidently overcomes obstacles, and even after being pushed by um, uh, the people, and it's using its new locomotion systems, um, the Helix walking controller, to be able to navigate itself a lot better, which is quite interesting aspect of it.
Yeah, and according to the company's founder Brett Adcock, the walking controller is trained with reinforcement learning, and perhaps unsurprisingly, and what it allows the robot to do is to move solely relying on internal sensors for balance without the camera data. So, like I said, the blindfold bit being new, because we've seen robots navigating rough terrain, but they're looking at what the terrain is. This is, if you can imagine trying to be asked to run across, kind of rough rocks with your eyes shut, that's really difficult to do. It requires a strong sense of proprioception. But they've described the achieved stability and reliability as near superhuman. And Helix is also part of a broader VLA, so vision language action architecture, that unifies perception and language understanding and motor control to coordinate the whole body movement. So yeah, we're seeing some really good stuff coming out of figuring. We've seen them, kind of folding laundry and doing all sorts of things. So they really are looking to make this useful as soon as possible.
Yeah, it should be. And then obviously we come to our one of the earliest movers in this game, Boston Dynamics. They showed an impressive video of the latest version of Atlas. Now, Atlas received a camera image, body state data, and text command. Based on this, the model generates a smooth full body motions 30 times per second. So it's not a set of brittle scripts. It's like a system that figures out how to get out of situations. So instead of jumping point to point, the system immediately builds a short action sequence about 1.5 seconds ahead. Some actions are executed, then the plan is updated, so movements remain precise and natural. So Atlas has shown it can succeed in real world challenges while everything falls, moves, and gets in the way. So it's pretty much explaining the VLA model that we saw from Figure AI. It's like this is exactly how it's done without actually having the camera data, where you do something, you learn from it, and then you pivot. So quite
Yeah.
interesting.
So kind of predicting what's going to happen, and then sort of starting to execute that, and then cross-checking, is what's happening what I predicted was going to happen with this particular instruction or movement that I'm trying to do, and then predict another 1.5 seconds and kind of running through that, which I guess is sort of how the human brain works, although probably more at an
Yeah,
unconscious level. It's thinking, oh, I need to reach out and grab this glass, pick it up and
well,
have a
absolutely
drink and
agree.
then put it down accurately on the mat. But if I sort of clip the mouse on the desk as I'm trying to pick it up, then I need to adjust, rather than chuck the drink all over the desk. Yeah, cool.
Exactly.
So
Yes.
Tsinghua University have also shown a humanoid robot, and this one I saw the video of, can now rally over 100 consecutive shots against a human in real table tennis. So we've seen table tennis
Wow.
kind of playing robots before, but this one, they're saying, is fully autonomous, sub-second reaction, and human-like strikes. Something to be aware of, though, that the hitter system combines a model-based planner with reinforcement learning. It is fully autonomous, but it does rely on an external sensing system. So I think there's still a bit further to go with this. At the moment, there's a whole 9-camera OptiTrack motion capture setup, which is tracking the ball, which is covered with reflective markers to predict its precise trajectory and then compute the optimal strike position, velocity, and timing. So it's not just playing on a bog standard table tennis table, just using the cameras on the robot, and a standard table tennis ball. It's got lots of other kind of additional support mechanisms to give it the input it needs. But it's still impressive to watch, and watching them, playing against the human. Really good. It can execute coordinated arm and leg and waist movements, so real kind of full body motion. And as you'll see if you watch the video, we'll put the link in, producing really good agile human-like returns. So yeah,
Yeah,
having your
interesting.
robot to practice with at home if you want to play table tennis, I'm sure we'll get there.
Oh, good one. Yeah, actually, I might give it a go. But moving on to ethics, schmethics. Basically, one of the items coming
Yeah.
through is Florida schools will start testing pepper spray drones to counter school shooters. I mean, I think that it's a very serious topic, but
Oh hell.
this is an interesting way, and
Yeah.
maybe this strange experiment actually works. So, 3 Florida counties are preparing the trial of drone system that designed to neutralize attackers. The drones built by Campus Guardian Angel can be activated within 5 seconds of an alarm and reach a shooter in 15 seconds, which is quite fast. They're equipped
Yeah.
with pepper spray balls to blind or slow the attacker and can break windows to distract and stream live video to law enforcement. So basically, according to CEO, if that doesn't help, the drones will keep ramming the attacker until police arrive. The project has already raised serious ethical concerns about safety, but the state allocated 557,000. So 500,000. I'm just fumbling numbers here. It's 557K for the pilots. Installations in schools are planned for the fall with full launch in January. So potentially it's life-saving.
It's potentially yes. Oh, I don't really want to get into whole sort of America and gun culture and everything else. So
Yeah, I mean, I
yes,
think that's right. We're
if
not
you're
here
not
to
going
make
to
judgments here. We're
actually
just kind
introduce,
of reporting the. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's one way of dealing with it. So yeah, we'll wait and see. Again, at any time you get this sort of stuff, you go, okay, slaughter bots all over again. So how long before it's not just pepper spray? It's active, kind of live ammunition to deal with the
Yeah.
attackers. George Hinton. So he's once again warning about doomsday. So he's claiming that with AI, we are literally creating alien beings. I'll quote what he said. He said, "We've never faced something smarter than us. Nuclear weapons aren't smarter than us. They just make big explosions, and they're easy to understand, relatively speaking. The existential threat is something else entirely. In the case of AI, people don't realize we're creating aliens. If you look through the James Webb Telescope and saw an alien fleet arriving on Earth in 10 years, people would be terrified. And that's essentially what we're doing. They're real entities. They understand what they're saying. They can form their own plans and blackmail people who try to shut them down." He's apparently referring to some research. So we should be very worried and urgently start doing research to understand how to prevent a takeover, because this threat is unlike anything we've faced before. So, yeah, I really get kind of torn with this because
Yeah.
yes, I understand that the doomsday aspect of it, and this, I don't know whether it's dream or nightmare or whatever, that we get sort of these massively capable, AI entities, and then you get the sort of thing that I encountered just trying to use both Grok and, which one was it? Grok and Claude, I think. There was a chessboard and there was one pawn missing off the white row in square H2, and sort of uploaded the image and went, on what square is the pawn missing on this chessboard? And despite repeated prompting, neither of them could get it right, and eventually just gave up. And I think Gemini, I gave it to, did get it right first shot. But I got into a bit of an argument online with somebody about this, kind of going, how do we expect people to trust these systems and what they're creating when you try and give them a simple problem like that and they can't seem to get it right? So it's two very contradictory things. Some of the complex stuff they absolutely can
Yep.
do amazing things, but then stuff, if I gave you a calculator and I said, look, this can calculate any formula, you don't need to understand the formula, it'll be able to give you the answer. But then you take the calculator off me and you ask it what's 2 + 2 and it tells you it's 5. You're not going to trust the more complex stuff that you're asking it to do. So, talking about creating aliens and we're going to have this in 10 years' time, I don't know.
I think that's the argument, right? That the argument is the other way around, is that it is so intelligent that it can potentially play stupid for you to not take it seriously, and then it becomes sinister at the end. So again, these are the hypotheses coming up, right? And I think that
pretending
this
to
is
be
developing.
stupid.
Yeah.
But that brings us to the end of today's episode. So quite a lot there, and perhaps a slightly down note to finish on. But I think we do need to make sure that we're not, creating our future overlords. But as always, to remind people, don't forget about NGX SPACE. You can find more details about the NGX community on there. If you have enjoyed this episode, please do like and subscribe and click on the bell icon to turn your notifications on so you get to know when the next episode comes out. But for today, that's all from me.
Yeah, well, for me as well. See you next time.
All right, lovely. Take care. Thanks, Govind. Bye-bye.